9, 12, 10, 28, 2, 23.
This is the DSR Podcast. Hello and welcome to DSR's Need to Know podcast, where each week we do a deep dive with somebody we think you really ought to spend some time with. And this week we are very fortunate to have with us our friend Wajahat Ali. He of the Left Hook Substack, great writing from many places, commentary everywhere you look. How are you doing, Waj?
I'm doing well. I just had Pakistani mangoes. I paid $37 a crate, but this is my one indulgence and is also my one Pakistani stereotype, and it gets me through the chaos that is the Trump regime. So I'm in a good mood.
How many mangoes are in a crate?
If I told you it's 6, so I'm paying $6 per one Pakistani mango. So I enjoy. I just sit there. It's like gold. I sit there and enjoy every drop of that one mango. And as a child of immigrants, I'm like, this effing mango cost me $6, but it's worth it.
But it's worth it. Well, you know, child of immigrants is a good place to start because we seem to be moving towards a period where there may be no immigrants, or maybe they'll just be those poor white South Africans who are suffering from that genocide that they're suffering from in South Africa, which is very sad. And
very sad. The non-existent genocide is very tragic.
But, you know, Trump this week, one of the things he did was he said, not only do I want to block these 36 countries, I want to block another 25. Did you notice anything about those countries that maybe they all had in common? I was just wondering if you picked up on any patterns.
Yeah, I think they're all part of what Trump said in the first administration, that they're shithole countries. And the way he defined shithole countries is they have a melanin that is around my color or a bit more darker. So we're talking about caramel to mocha. So in addition to the Muslim majority countries, now it's African countries and the Caribbean and also Latin American countries. But shockingly, Norway. Remember that? He said, why can't more people come from Norway? And you and me, Dave, we're lucky people. We've traveled the world. I've been to Norway. Great country. Norway is so white that when I was in Norway for a week, my teeth became white. Like, Norway is one of the whitest places I've ever seen. We're talking about like the Vikings probably, stroll around in Norway. Not too many Jews and Muslims, but nonetheless, fantastic place. And somehow in Stephen Miller's travel ban, because let's be honest, this is Stephen Miller and Steve Bannon's wet dream. Now the Muslim ban has expanded to include all these black and brown countries. And speaking about the war on immigrants, David, what I've been trying to tell people in the first Trump administration, it was when Donald Trump mainstreamed it by attacking Muslims. A lot of folks, because Islamophobia and anti-Arab bigotry is normalized, they're like, he'll just go after the Muslims. And in the second Trump administration, it was the undocumented. Remember the Haitians eating dogs and pets and the Venezuelan gangs? And people are like, it's the undocumented. But as we've seen, even Senator Padilla, it doesn't matter that he's a senator. Secret Service saw a brown man and they said, let's get to work. Even if you're a Jewish white man, Brad Lander from New York, doesn't matter. They're like, a white man interfering, let's get to work. And even if you are a conservative baseball fan going to Dodger Stadium yesterday, it didn't matter. They were coming to Dodger Stadium, and thank God, the Los Angeles Dodgers said, nope, you're not allowed, and turned away ICE. So, folks, this war on the immigrants, fascists come for everyone, and that boot is going to come down on your neck and against your door, which is what we've been saying for 10 years. Those of us who said, and you were part of it, David, that this is not a normal Republican Party, this is an aspiring authoritarian, and this is a racist. And voila, David, here we go.
Yeah, no, we've got, we were outraged by the Muslim ban, and the court slowed that down, and they thought about it, and they came back and said, no, that was too narrow. What we want to do is we want to ban people of color from countries full of people of color, and they're adding to that now. This idea that they're going to screen student visa applicants for their social media presence, and I think, by the way, that's a lot of work. Consular officers have to do that. And if we could just come up with a melanin measure, it would save them a lot of trouble. Because,
I mean,
you just hold up a little thing and say, oh, no, nope, too brown. Sorry, we can't take you. Because, you're just a little too brown.
Family Guy color chart. You want the Family Guy color chart to be used by TSA and
I think that's where we're headed. I'm not endorsing it. I just think that's where we're headed.
And it would be more efficient, right? So you just have the TSA agent, every time a person comes in, goes through customs, you just have them, excuse me, sir, just stand next to the chart, and then we'll have AI decipher where they land on the Family Guy chart. And if they're in the top half of the whitish, wheatish complexion, they get to go through. And if they're below and look like me, they're like, sorry, SOL, we're going to either turn you around, or maybe if you don't have your passport or the appropriate document, you'll get renditioned. Because in addition to what David said, they're also now open to renditioning people to Guantanamo. So, David, I have a question for you. I asked Danielle Moody this question. She was on we co-host a show, Democracy-ish. World Cup's happening 2026. LA is one of the host cities. Olympics is happening 2028. Now, sincerely, suppose you were a visitor, right? And you're coming to America for the World Cup or the Olympics. If there was even a 5% chance that you could get kidnapped, arrested, detained, and then renditioned if you left your hotel without the passport, right? And I'm not making this up, folks, because ICE, they're saying they've tried to deploy ICE to friggin' Dodger Stadium, and they're saying they're going to have ICE around during the World Cup. But suppose, this happens. We've traveled a lot. You and me have been very lucky. We've traveled around the world. Oftentimes I go, you know what? I probably don't want to carry my passport everywhere in Karachi, Pakistan, because it might fall. So I'll just keep it at the hotel or at home, and I'll go out and get my mangoes in Karachi. I'm sure a lot of folks who are visiting America, or we're planning on visiting America for the World Cup and Olympics, same thing. I'm just going to go out for a drink. I'll leave my passport in the hotel. If there was even a 5% chance, David, that you as an immigrant visiting this country could get you detained and renditioned for accidentally leaving your passport in your hotel, would you come to this country for the World Cup?
Of course not. But that's what's happening. People are not going to come for the World Cup. They're not coming for tourism this year. They're not going to go and apply to go to study in the United States because there is a two-step effort here. I think if they use the Family Guy color chart, that would be one. If you end up on the white side and possibly can enter, then they're going to screen your they're going to screen your social media, and they're going to say, oh, no, sorry, you said something against Trump. You also can't come in. Or you said something defending Palestine. You also can't come into this country. And so, if you are, I'm going to say the Olympics and the World Cup are kind of sui generis, kind of smaller things. If you were thinking of coming to America to study or coming to America to work, would you come in 4 years even if there were a Democratic president? And the answer is no, you wouldn't, because you don't know what's going to happen 2 years down the road, right? I mean, what I don't think people fully realize, because we can make fun of it all we want, is that this is going to have a generational consequence for the United States of America.
And you were on my show last week, and I think you broke it down very well. I've been trying to articulate it to folks about the self-destructive aspect about white supremacy and the generational damage that Trump has done already in 5-6 months. But let's just tease it out right here. Right, you've already mentioned, as of now, 5 months into his presidency, we know that tourism across the board is down. That is going to cost U.S. Economy $12 billion in revenue, right? Because no one's coming here. They're like, F this. Canada's not coming. Europeans aren't coming, right? They've done the data. It's down everywhere from around the world. So at the very least, and this number is probably going to grow, we've lost $12 billion. All right, that hurts the U.S. economy. Now, what you just mentioned, that's not a what if. We also know that a French scientist who was coming to participate in a symposium, he was stopped. His phone was checked. Apparently, he might have posted something that was critical of Trump, and he was turned away. So now you're not going to have the world's leading scientists experts in medicine, technology, in every field, willing to come and participate in U.S. festivals and symposiums, right? So they're going to go internationally. Then you're going to have the world's best and brightest students who used to come to America, people like my father, generation of immigrants, post-1965, right? We come to America, get the education, either we'll stay or we'll go back. But the world's premier universities are here in the United States of America. They're not going to come here. They're probably going to go to Europe and China. And then what we've also found out in the past month, David, is China and Japan and Europe are actively poaching the best and the brightest as Donald Trump is cutting all of the grants to scientists doing cutting edge work on, I don't know, cancer research and AI. So not only is like a brain drain, it's like a brain block and a brain like flee. Like, I don't know what all the verbs you could put. All the brains basically are going to be outside of America. And I don't think people realize that this does not make America great again. This is like the world's dumbest people making us dumber in real time for a generation.
And poorer, and making our rivals around the world stronger, because the Chinese are offering, well, we'll pay for your research and you can come study here, and so are others doing it. But let me take you to a special case in this. And I do this with a little trepidation because although this podcast will drop within hours of recording it, typically we hold these for a week before they're available to the public so that our members can get it. But I'm going to say we're just going to hold this until Tuesday morning. And the reason is I want to ask you about something that's going to happen next Tuesday, and I don't want it to be out of date. Because I think there is a place where all these stories come together. And to me, I find it particularly appalling. And that is the New York mayoral race, where you've got a guy, Andrew Cuomo, who is a sex abuser, who is corrupt, is a liar, did a lousy job as the governor of the state, and should have come nowhere near the being the mayor of this biggest city in the United States. Essentially, in a race against a challenger named Zoran Mamdani, and Zoran Mamdani is a New York assemblyman. He is accomplished in that regard. He's a very, very smart guy with, I think, very thoughtful proposals for New York City. The campaign against him in the past few days has turned vile and racist. It is playing against the fact he's of Ugandan Indian background. He's a Muslim. It's playing against that. It's using the fact that he's a Muslim to amplify the fact that he's actually against killing small children in Palestine, and saying and I saw one today that said he's a existential threat, which is a term people use. I don't think they know what it means anymore. An existential threat to the Jews. There's another element of this, because he's been a social democrat, which, by the way, is what the majority party is in virtually every country in the developed world. But here in the U.S., we ostracize. And so they're saying, well, he hates the Jews and he's a socialist. But really what they're saying is, look, he's brown. We can't have this guy who's a foreigner be the mayor. Now, the current mayor of New York's a black guy, but he is a pro-Trump black guy. I mean, he's a particularly odious guy in himself. And I'm just wondering, as you watch this race and watch how they're treating Zoran Mamdani, how do you react?
Yeah, I was waiting for the shoe to drop. This is the post-war and terror normalization of Islamophobia and anti-Arab racism. You mix in it with the usual racism that we see. You see the usual players combining their powers like evil Voltron to take out Zoran Mamdani. This includes those who we've seen the money now, like the pro-Israel AIPAC lobby that says, Muslim brown guy speaks out against Netanyahu, speaks out against genocide in Gaza. Threat, take him out. Ooh, Wall Street, Democratic Socialist. He actually wants the rich people to pay their taxes. We can't have an AOC or a Bernie or an Elizabeth Warren or Zoran Mamdani in New York City. My God. Take him out, right? He's an existential threat to us. They're combining their powers. And what was so shameful, and I know this is coming out on Tuesday, that on Friday, Representative Clyburn, a Democratic leader, came out publicly in support of Cuomo, praising his character, even though 4 years ago he was the one, along with the entire Democratic leadership, telling Cuomo to resign. This is, to me, David, and I posted about this, it is like if there was a breaking point for me walking away from Democrats, it's this, because it's not lost on me as a brown person who's in his 40s. Zoran in 10 years will probably look like me with a beard as a child of Muslim immigrants. What they're doing to Zoran is what they would have done to me and people like me, right? Folks, it's so disgusting that the Cuomo campaign digitally altered a photo of Zoran Mamdani and gave him a bigger, bushier, longer beard. Because bigger beard on brown men means what? Hamas, terrorism. And then they're calling him anti-Semite, even though all the questions he's been asked, and only he's been asked this, repeatedly show he's not anti-Semite. He just doesn't want Palestinians to be occupied, and he doesn't want, corrupt government of Netanyahu to run roughshod over international law, and he wants the genocide to stop, which, by the way, is now a majority position, right? So
it's a majority position. I just want to add, it is a majority position held by 70% of American Jews.
Right? But exactly. And a majority of Jews voted for the Democrats, and a majority of Jews in America are not aligned with AIPAC or ADL and hate Benjamin Netanyahu because he represents a threat to the establishment, David, right? I think you're seeing it in real time. There's no subtlety, especially with Clyburn coming out and Democrats openly coming out. Like this, Clyburn comes out and promotes him 2 days. I'm sure you saw this New York Times article where the New York Times did a deep dive in the DNC. DNC strapped for cash, desperate. So donors are walking away from the DNC. They have no money. They have the lowest favorability rating, even lower than Trump, who had this lowest favorability rating in the Quinnipiac poll. And they're like, how do we win over the kids? Let's go for Cuomo against this young guy who's galvanizing, so many diverse Americans with this really fresh, really energetic, creative campaign. He got AOC to come out. He's got all these people of color. Let's destroy him in his tracks with the most racist, horrific ads. And let's say he's against Jews and he's against capitalism, and let's crush him. And let's crush him as a unified force with the full weight of Democratic leadership behind it. David, let it burn, man. Let it burn and let something better come.
I am totally with you. First of all, Zoran Mamdani represents nobody so much as a potential mayor of New York as Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, who is also Muslim, is also, believes in a kind of similar view towards the economy, and has been a great mayor of London, has been reelected as the mayor of London. I think he's exactly what New York needs. I would add something to it, though, and this gets it even more pernicious. Today, also, just as Clyburn came out against Mamdani, so did Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary.
I didn't see that.
And he came out against him because he said he was a democratic socialist. Socialist being a word that is used by, sort of the establishment class in the United States for the past 100 years to say somebody who wants the economy to actually be fair, to take care of people who can't take care of themselves, and to actually operate like every other developed economy in the world except ours. But we come up with this code word, socialist. We say you can't do it. And what I'm getting at here is that there is an alliance between the Wall Street corporate crowd and this group of racists. And Cuomo is playing to them. And he's saying, well, look, I'm the only one. Cuomo is the Trump wing of the Democratic Party. Just like Eric Adams, the terrible mayor of New York, is the Trump wing of the Democratic Party. And they like him. And so they're using every tool in the book, from racism to slurring his very sensible economic proposals to try to stop him. And I just
saw his post is remarkable. The Larry Summers post, just amazing. The fact that he just said this: every American is a citizen of New York City. It's so much a cultural and financial hub of our country that what happens in New York City is consequential for all of us. And I'm not an expert on the exigencies of the details of New York City economic policy, but I do think the Democratic Socialist program would be profound and dangerous for New York City, for the Democratic Party, and for the USA. Can't make this up, David.
No, you can't, because first of all, I've known Larry Summers for 35 years, and anytime he has ever said, I am not an expert, he's lying, because he thinks he's the expert on everything, okay? But secondly, in terms of this, we are seeing a deeper problem, and I think it's particularly cute because, frankly, some of the best leaders in the Democratic Party right now embrace ideas like healthcare for everybody, like trying to make affordable housing available to everybody, like trying to, protect the environment and care about how the economy affects all of us, as opposed to tilting it in favor of the few with the most resources. And they will call that socialist. They will call it socialist every time. But you know what else it is? And this is the thing that nobody will talk about. These are the policies that help people of color. The people who need the help from the government the most because of the institutional racism in our society are people of color. And so when they attack socialism, what they're really saying is, I attack programs that help the people in the bottom fifth of the economy, help the people that need to rise up, help the people that do not have health care, and those are heavily, predominantly people of color. So, I think it's important for people to understand that the anti-Mamdani economic rhetoric and the anti-Mamdani racism and the Trump border racism are all the same racism.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important that you're saying and connecting the dots, because what I've said is the twin sins of this country have always been white supremacy and capitalism. I'm talking about unfettered greed. Let me break it down. Racism and greed. And you're seeing the intersection of those two sins, which are people, though those are in power who have profited off it, are unwilling to confront or reform. In the intersection of what you're seeing right now is the attack on immigrants and also the attack on Mamdani, right? Because the establishment, which includes the gatekeepers, are so threatened by Black Lives Matter. You know this, I know this. You had the conversation with them. They were very threatened, folks, privately. They were very threatened by Me Too, right? They were very threatened by wokeness, very threatened. These are even the donors to liberal causes and the Democratic Party, right? They thought they were being replaced. They see a Mamdani and AOC and Elizabeth Warren and these others. Oh my God, they're coming after me and my wealth. And I don't want reformation. I want restoration. Let's go back to the 90s. Let's go back to neoliberalism, the good old days, right? This is too much for us. So let's have the status quo, and we'll have our buddies in power, and we'll have a guy like Trump in check, like it used to be, right? And there'll be a reset. And what you're seeing is people, oftentimes, not just people of color, but poor people, poor white people. But it's always been, people of color say, no, we don't want restoration. We want reformation. We want this country to finally stretch and expand itself and be the country it's always promised, itself and others that it can become. We want that country. So we want reformation. We want change. The establishment is not helping us. The institutions are not serving us. They're serving the elite, the 1%. And then any person who comes out and says, I want to challenge the establishment, what do they do to him, David? Outlier, socialist, freak, radical. It'll destroy everything. And the funny thing is, these people are the ones who destroy the economy.
They use other code words too. They call the squad. They come up with a term and they say, "Oh, that's the squad." Well, who are the squad, right? And why are they targeting the squad? I'll go a step further than you will, although I may bring back the word restoration. But I think American capitalism killed American democracy.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that we've become a system where post Citizens United and post the decisions of this Supreme Court, the few control the outcomes in our elections. They are not representative anymore. And that while many Democrats say we need to fight to preserve democracy in America, they're wrong. We need to fight to restore democracy in America. It is gone. And what we need to do is remember that the economy and the corporations within the economy are there to serve society and not society to serve them. And when the very first I wrote a book about this, and when the very first corporations were established, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, it was because it was in the interest of society to enable these economic entities to continue to live after the people in them died. But the charter was you serve the state. And we lost track of that in the course of the past 100, 150 years, to the point that when the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution was passed, and it said everybody is guaranteed equal justice or equal rights under the law, it has been used more in the ensuing 160 years to defend and preserve the rights of corporations than of people in legal cases, which is outrageous. We have lost sight of why we are organized in a society, and we need to fight to bring it back. And I think, and this is comes my question to you, I think part of what that is we have to stop letting them define our vocabulary.
Yes.
And use their code words to, socialism, bad. Oh, the squad is bad. Oh, pro-Palestine is anti-Semitism, et cetera, et cetera. All that stuff is a tool to maintain the status quo for a very narrow group of people.
Or even woke, right? You see Democrats using the bad faith terminology and definition of wokeness against their own base. Senator Slotkin, former CI officer of Michigan, who was chosen by the Democrats to respond to Trump's state of the whatever that was, used the word, has said we have to do, we can no longer be weak and woke, and we have to adopt the goddamn alpha energy of Lions coach Dan Campbell. Like, what are you talking about? What you're talking about is people of color. Let's be honest. So let's move away from DEI. Let's move away from CRT. Let's move away from woke. Let's move away from BLM. Let's move away from transgender rights. Let's move away from Palestinian rights. Let's just court this base of, let's be honest, very wealthy, mostly white, comfortable individuals who are donors, who want a retreat back to the 1990s and are perfectly fine throwing their money and controlling the politicians. And as far as the politicians go, they also need to remember, David, like you said, they are servants of the people, right? This is not a birthright. Clyburn, I think, was famously asked, why don't you, Democrats, you have a problem. You literally are dying in office. And he's in his 80s. He goes, well, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Go golf. Go retire. Chuck Schumer has been in office for 50. This is the only job that Chuck Schumer has ever known, David. And I feel like these people think this is their birthright. This is owed to them. And they'll be like Charlton Heston, that famous quote that you'll remember, the NRA quote, where he was holding up the rifle and he said, "You're going to have to pry this from my cold, dead hands." And literally Jerry Connolly died in office. They could have had AOC as the oversight chair. She threw her hat in the ring, and Nancy Pelosi whipped up votes for 73-year-old Jerry Connolly. Now, he died at the age of 74. 5 months later, he had cancer. And we're sitting here, David, and we're like, literally, they're willing to burn the country down. And literally, they're willing to burn the poor folks, the black folks, the brown folks down to maintain power and get more money, more wealth, more homes, more power. And all of it goes to the top. None of it goes to the bottom, which is why, surprise, surprise, when Bernie and AOC did Fight the Oligarchy tour, it caught traction. When you're saying no kings, it catches traction. What catches traction? Tax the rich. Fox News, each time they do the poll, majority of Fox viewers are like, yeah, maybe the rich should pay their taxes. And that's why I think, David, it's very threatening. And to quote George Carlin, it's a big club. And you ain't in it. And what people don't realize, that club that you know and I know is an incestuous club that includes the Wall Street bros, the MAGA bros, the crypto bros, some of these law firms, and some of these elected officials from both sides.
Right, and it's why we have the most corrupt government in our history. It's why the Senate has just passed a rule to essentially allow the flourishing of crypto corruption and the fleecing of ordinary consumers in this. But and it's another thing that is relevant going forward. As we look at 2026, if there is an election, the Democrats are likely to win the election. And that's why you've seen a big push recently in the Democratic Party debate to say, oh, well, the leftists, the progressives, the liberals are the problem. We've got to move to the center. We've got to meet them halfway on immigration. We've got to meet them halfway on taxes and stuff like that. Personally, I don't think you meet fascists halfway. But the point is, there are people funding that. The reason they're funding it is that they want to. I was in the Clinton administration, and I was out there spouting this stuff. And I realize now that we were offering Reagan-like policies that helped exacerbate inequality, just as the Obama administration, which took more money from Wall Street than any administration in history, is doing the same thing. And I think after 40 years, the worst inequality in our history, the worst corruption in our history, the worst threat to democracy in our history, it's time that people say, stop. You don't get to define this anymore. We're going to define this. We're going to own who we are. We are pro-democracy. We are pro-opportunity. We are pro-fairness. We are pro the rule of law. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about in all of that.
Amen. I completely agree. And I think, arrogance, pride before the fall. The Democrats keep thinking, and we saw this. Look, let's bring it back just a few months ago to the 2024 election, right? And you saw the symptom emerge, and they haven't learned. The YouGov poll shows that the number one reason why a lot of Democrats stayed at home, right? A lot of people just didn't come out to vote. They weren't inspired, was because of the genocide in Gaza. Now, it wouldn't have given Kamala the win, but she probably would have lost by less. But what happened was the Democrats, instead of looking at their base, listening to their base, what do, Dave? Shut up. You shut your mouth, and we're going to give you this platform, and you're going to take it. Okay, can you at least just have a Palestinian speaker speak alongside the, Rose Poland, who's the mother of the Israeli hostage, who spoke so beautifully? No. And guess what? You're going to vote for us because who are you going to vote for? Trump? No, you're not. So listen, Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim and brown person, vote for us. Okay? That's what you're going to do. And people said, no, I'm not. And increasingly, I don't know if you've talked to a lot of folks, Dave, I've talked to a lot of folks, they say the following. Yeah, Trump sucks. I guess I'll vote for Kamala, but both sides suck. They don't care about me. And it's going to come to a head, David, because smallpox is friggin' going, measles is now thousands of cases. Bird flu, we're not going to have a vaccine. Cancer research has been cut. Hurricane season is upon us. FEMA, who knows if it'll get funded. Jobs are lost. We're probably going to have a recession. People are going to reel from the lack of tourism. Department of Education was cut. Like, we could go down the list. This pain is coming, David. And I don't think the Democrats and the establishment who think that people will just sit there and take it, even in the Republican Party, I think they have another thing coming. I don't think people sit there and take it, especially as they lose their Medicaid and their Social Security. But the Democrats should know better. And the reason why the Democrats haven't been able to benefit off of Donald Trump being underwater is because people are fleeing the Democratic Party. They're going towards fighters. Who is willing to fight? So you see a person like Senator Van Hollen, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Mamdani. You see them now having like the winds behind their back. And each time they're about to take off, AOC said it during the Mamdani conference, we've tried to work with them. And each time, what do? They kick us down. And there's only so much until they can kick them down. And I think we're going to witness what happened with the Tea Party and the Republicans in 2012. Eric Cantor was supposed to be the guy until he wasn't, David.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And I think that starts by taking back our words and embracing them with pride. Woke is good. Woke is compassion.
Absolutely.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion are what the U.S. Constitution is or should be about at every turn. Being a liberal, being a progressive, these are not bad things. It is a good thing to be for progress. It is a good thing to be open-minded to new ideas. And instead of saying, "Oh, we can't do that. We can't talk this way. Let's be a little Trump light. Let's drive a pickup and let's say, you know what? Everybody should have a gun." No. It's crazy. We have a pathology in this country. And I think this could be a breaking point for the reason that you said, and this will be my last comment, which is a solicitation for a comment from you, which is, you're right. 20 million people are going to be kicked off Medicaid and Medicare. Another several million are going to lose SNAP, which was food stamps once upon a time. Millions and millions of people are going to be hurt. Every single American is going to feel it or is going to know somebody who felt it. Every single American is going to understand that all of this, not just Trump, but 40 years in this direction, has hurt them. And It would be a great time to stand up and say, how about trying these other things, which are actually the principles on which American greatness was built?
Amen. But I think we're going to have to force it. Power concedes nothing, right? So this is going to be, I think, what we're seeing, folks, is if you outsource this to the leaders, to the institutions, to the establishment, whether it be in politics, whether it be in Wall Street, whether it be in law firms, whether it be in corporate media, you're going to keep waiting and you're going to die. I think this is going to have to come from the people. And I think this has to come from the grassroots. And there are vacancies for leadership, especially in the Democratic Party. There's a Cold War in the Democratic Party for leadership, which is slowly but surely, as of this week, being articulated out loud. I think whoever meets the moment, whoever rises and captures that pain and anger and righteous rage of the majority and is willing to fight for the majority against this establishment, Dave, I think that will be the leader. And I want to remind people that there was an overlap between people in 2024 who voted for Trump and AOC. And when asked why, they said, well, they want to change up the establishment and the system that doesn't work for me. Now, of course, we know Donald Trump is a bullshit artist. With AOC, she actually, is authentic. But you see it. People who are willing to fight for the majority, for poor people, for people of color, for the woke, for CRT, for DEI, for, women and women's rights, for immigrants, and willing to lead with conviction. And also, David, I'll say the last thing is authenticity. Tell me what you believe in. Tell me what you're willing to fight for. Even if it's unpopular, are you at least willing to fight for it? Then damn it, fine. I respect that, right? Don't freaking workshop every single talking point and ask a centrist corporate consultant, should I care about immigrants now? You should, because of principle, right? You should care about workers. You should care about women's rights. You should care about transgender kids. Find me a fighter, David, who has conviction and principle and values and is willing to fight for them and the people. I think that will be the person who rises from the grassroots. And I think in our lifetime, we might not see the full reformation or even the restoration of democracy, but I do think we can be part of the mobilization towards it.
I offer you an amen. Absolutely right. Sick and tired of candidates who are either created by a consultant or who always look like they're trying to figure out what answer the audience wants to hear. Got to speak from the heart. Authenticity is key. Waj, as always, it's great to talk to you, and I strongly encourage everybody to go to The Left Hook and subscribe to it on Substack and to listen to you elsewhere. Are there other places you want them to listen to you?
Yeah, go to The Left Hook. Everything is free. There's no paywall. Pay what you can. I also co-host Democracy-ish with Danielle Moody, Mondays and Wednesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Once in a while I write for all these outlets, so you can probably catch me there. A column for The Progressive that comes out every couple of months. And also on YouTube. It's at YouTube Wajahat Ali, where I have everything for free. If you can throw in a few dollars, great. If not, at least be informed and share the good content and the good word, because I heard, David, democracy dies in darkness. Someone used to say that. And last thing I'll say is, listen, you see it in real time. First they came for transgender folks, then they came for undocumented folks, then they came for legal immigrants, then they came for Muslims. Fascists come for everyone, including themselves. So please, oh please, don't be a fascist.
Good advice. Good advice all the time. Thank you, Watch, for that. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Join us again soon. Until then, bye-bye.